Yeah.
How did it
I said
go? Hi,
Richman.
Mitzi.
Legendary. And then
Hi,
Bishop.
Bishop.
We are
It's
the
okay.
we are the gallery of legends. That's what we are.
Right.
We push legends.
It wasn't that bad. It was definitely better than I thought it would be. My teacher
Yay.
got me
Oh,
prepared for
you had your
a
Latin exam.
catastrophic.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
Bishop looking normal. You had your Latin exam today, Aubrey,
I did.
and you're smiling still. That's good.
Yeah.
You're alive.
You're
Yes,
alive,
I'm
right? Good.
alive. My Latin teacher prepared me for the catastrophic end of the universe, and it was actually not that bad.
Oh,
So,
The
good,
universe
good.
didn't end. What?
no.
Did you have enough time for everything?
I did. I actually ended up with 40 minutes left over on the FRQ section.
Hmm.
So I was actually really bored during the second section.
That's a long time to have left over. And
Yeah, we
and
we
did
got
they?
almost 2 hours to do the essays, and yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, that's the sort of thing you can let me know about on Friday afternoon. Did you have extra time? Did you not? Did you? I was just about to write my final sentence when time was up. Bishop, you've got your hand up. What do you have to say?
I wanted to say thank you for this course because this is the one course I'm actually enjoying right now in this study
You're only
season.
one. Oh, dear.
This
Well, I
is
feel
Well, the
Richman.
thing
honored.
is, for some reason, I decided to take 4 AP tests.
Oh,
Oh, no.
So
Whoa,
so when
way.
is your first exam, or did you have an exam today?
I've not had an exam yet. No.
Okay.
My first exam is the APUSH exam this
Okay.
Friday.
Okay. And then they're all bunched up next week, huh?
Exams.
Which
Hmm.
APs are you taking?
I'm taking AP US History, AP Psychology, AP English Language, and
No
AP
way.
Physics C Mechanics.
Okay.
Oh
And
my gosh, Bishop Gilmore, that is insane.
and look, he's still
Yeah,
Um,
smiling.
I'm
Are
like,
you
That's
take
gonna be me next year.
oh
I
no.
I'm scared already.
I know
Yeah,
you're
seriously.
taking physics with us with Dr. Kernian, right? Um,
yes.
are you taking the other classes at other places or
I just
self-studying?
self-studied for
Okay.
those. I'm not even taking a
Too,
course with them.
yeah, you're self-studying. Too bad you
Mhm.
didn't take AP psychology. We have a wonderful teacher for that, Bonnie Gonzalez.
Really?
She's great, but oh well, a little late. But I would
Yeah.
highly recommend that to
Um,
anybody.
I'm not a push. I'm feeling supremely confident, and if I don't get a five, my jaw's like going to drop off my face from how
Yes, well,
wide my gasp
I'll
is.
put it that I don't share particular scores, but you did very, 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 very well on this practice test that we're about to go over.
It's
And
physics
everyone
that
did
I'm
well.
most worried about
Yeah.
because our professor, I guess he's good. I guess. But his questions that we've been through all year are not exactly formatted like how
Mm,
they are on the AP test.
mm.
So
So that's
it's like
thrown you a
today
little
I
bit.
open up the free response question practice test, and they're like 2 levels more complicated
Oh
than the
dear.
FRQs we had been doing. So,
Mm. Well, I tell you, this is physics you're talking about, right?
yes.
Um, his students generally do very, very well. So
Mhm. Yeah. I'm
I
feeling
hope.
better on the MCQs though.
Okay.
Yeah, MCQs are generally easier, except if you're going with AP. Because for some reason, for pre-calc, FRQs are easier than MCQs. I have no idea why. It's so weird. Oh
The
my
Maybe the
gosh.
pre-calculus
FRQs
final
have
is
more
gonna be
time.
all MCQs, and I'm so happy.
Which
Yes, lucky you. I have to do, there are 4 FRQs on the pre-calc exam, and it's like I think they're like 40 MCQs, and I think like I'm gonna say 37% is FRQ, so it's a good bit.
Mhm.
But I feel
Anna,
like even better. Yes.
physics C mechanics. Half the FRQs involve calculus plus all your physics knowledge.
No. Are you serious? Oh
You're
my
you're going to be
God.
integrating for at least one of your FRQs.
You know, I actually celebrate my FRQs and I feel like I'm overly critical about them. But on practice tests, I got threes and fours. But I want a five because if I get two fives on both APUSH and pre-calc, I can get my mom said I can have a Star Wars movie marathon where I do one trilogy a day, and that just sounds awesome.
There's motivation for you, huh?
No, as my
Well, my
dad put it, I was like,
motivation, my motivation to perform on the AP Latin exam is that my Latin teacher has a slideshow at the beginning of every year for the past 10 years. And in the past 8 years, not a single student has failed the AP Latin exam from Lucian. So
Okay.
if you are the first person to fail, you will be the first person to fail in 8 years, and everybody will see it for 10 years.
oh man,
So
that's bad.
there's my motivation.
Heavy duty. The
That's
carrot and the
awful.
stick, you know.
Yeah, I get the carrot, thankfully. Last year, my motivation to get good AP scores was seeing Fantastic Four First Steps in theaters. I did it. I got it though, so
Yeah.
very good, nice little motivation. Also, Aubrey, didn't you say your parents were hardcore in getting fives on AP exams?
Yeah, very hardcore. If I get a four, I'm disowned.
What the? A four? My mom was
Yeah.
saying like she wants like she's okay with me getting a four. Like she's like I'd like you to at least get a four. Like I'd like you. Not you're required, just I'd like you to at least get a four.
I get a four, I'm disowned.
Right.
Oh my gosh, Aubrey,
This is an
come to
My
my
example
house.
mom,
of
You'll
what
be
do they call
loving.
it? The tiger parents or tiger
Not
mom?
not
Aubrey,
even close.
Aubrey, come to my house. That you'll be loved no matter what AP score you have.
my
Oh,
mom
I'm
doesn't
sure
care
they'll.
which AP score I have, but I want to get a five. If I don't get a five, I'll like disown myself or something.
I just
My
own
parents will
yourself
still love
for.
me. I'll just be disowned.
What does that
Yeah.
mean?
It's just a
How
reality,
do
you
parents,
know?
how do parents love you if they disown you? That's weird.
Uh,
Like seriously. Oh my gosh, I'm glad my mother isn't that intense. She's like, I love you no matter what score you get, but please try to get a three or higher, basically. That's
uh,
basically the gist of it.
well, Aubrey, we'll all adopt you if you get disowned. So
Yeah,
Yes.
come live in my house.
there you go. You
I
can move
wish
to
it,
India.
yes. Yeah. I wish we had room at our house, but we already have me and Lena sharing a room, so four-bedroom house does not accommodate more than what we already have.
Oh,
Marissa
Marissa,
and
hi.
Caroline, you guys are here. Hello,
Hey.
Marissa. Marie,
Oh, and
hello.
Caroline's here too.
Hi,
Hi.
Caroline.
Yay! Yay!
Right. When is your AP Spanish exam coming up? Hi, Caroline.
Mine?
Yeah.
That one is on Thursday next week.
Oh, okay. So I'm glad it's not the day before a push. And
Yeah.
I think Abigail Zhu is the only person in our class who's taking AP macroeconomics. Oh, Walter, we missed you last
Hi.
week. We're glad you're here. Um,
Sir, yay!
and so Abigail Zhu will have to do the APUSH exam in the morning, then she gets like a half-hour break, and then she starts in on the macroeconomics exam,
No
which at
way.
least isn't as long an exam as AP APUSH, but I really
No,
should
what
warn
the?
people not
Oh
to
my
take
gosh.
APUSH in the same year they do AP macro.
Yeah. I looked in the schedules and I tried basically the same thing. So it was like May the 4th is this year and Cinco de Mayo was last year, which I was like, girl, I looked to the YouTube channel person. I was like, that is so weird.
Also,
I
One
Mr.
have,
of my
Richman,
friends.
um,
Yes.
oh, sorry, Aubrey, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good.
So I was wondering, so I'm working on my NHD project, and is it okay if I go a little bit over 10 minutes since I'm not
Oh,
officially
yes,
submitting it?
yes, of
Like,
course, of course.
can I
No,
just do kind of what's best for the overall flow of the documentary?
yes, right.
Oh
Since
Okay.
you're
my
not
gosh,
actually
Walter,
entering, that's
I stuck myself to the 10-minute limit because I didn't know. I still think my documentary is really bad, so you're such the judge of that, but I think it's terrible.
we will get to see on May 18th.
Oh, Marissa, you saw it?
I I have a friend who's taking AP Chem in the morning and AP Gov in the afternoon.
Oh,
Oh
Oh,
no.
It's
wow.
actually tomorrow.
Oh
So
gosh.
yeah.
Oh
She says
man.
she feels pretty good for the AP Chem exam, but she's really worried for Gov because she
Yeah.
took the She took it
Okay.
in the fall semester.
Yeah, that's
Oh man.
very challenging to take 2 exams in one day. Um, well, let us know how your friend does. I hope she makes it through. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
just not that much time in between if the morning exam is a long one. You know,
Yeah.
some exams are shorter than others, like government isn't as long an exam.
Oh my gosh, you guys. There's a
AP,
problem. If you guys study really well for Gov, it feels like forever because you finish in like 5 seconds, and then you wind up just doodling all over your paper while waiting for the MCQs to finally be over.
That was me during the Latin
Caroline,
FRQs.
so you're taking the AP pre-calc, Caroline. You are, okay.
Pre-calc
Honestly, I've been
stuffers unite.
sacrificing a lot of my pre-calc study time for APUSH review, but
Yeah, ditto. I like APUSH way better than pre-calc.
Good. Oh, here, Rainbow's here. And oh, good, Abigail. And Rainbow, hi. You're driving home or driving to someplace? Are you driving to a rehearsal, Rainbow, or? Abigail, are you all set with bringing lunch to the school where you're taking your exams on Friday? Stay there all day?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Abigail, I pity you. I admit, it's funny because, like, here's the deal. If you have an AP exam you're totally prepared for, seriously, I just from students like bio, I was like, okay, I find out of here. But so that was the first prepared exam. But if you're more prepared, then you're waltzing out of there like, oh, I feel so good. I'm gonna get a 5. This is a great day. Here we go. That's basically, there's no in between. There's either you feel good about it or you feel like you're no, just no, basically. That's just it.
Yeah, I just hope I don't do bad on a push because if I did, that's probably gonna ruin my mood when I'm doing
Oh,
macro.
that's true.
So
Oh, you're gonna do great on a push.
Abigail, we believe in you, Abigail. Is anybody here
thank
not
you.
taking the exam? At least I think all of us are, right?
I think everybody is that's here. I know Joanna Wang is not, she let me know partway through the year. She's just a freshman and she was always kind of iffy on if she wanted to take the exam or not and decided not to. And I know she would get a top score if she took the exam. She's a fabulous student, but they made that decision early on and they're sticking to it. So um, I think she's the only one I know of who's definitely not taking it. Though I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But okay, well, oh, I think we should get going here. We'll probably have a couple more people.
Sonos first.
Okay.
Sonos first, but the next at the NHD gala, I will be first. So
Okay, well, oh, I have been recording all along, so
Oh,
we got all
wow.
the chit chat in the beginning. Maybe well,
that's fun. No, don't
I'll,
edit it out. No, no,
I
no, no,
won't
no.
edit it out, but I'll leave it, but the link will go to around now. Okay, but you can always go back and see the rest. Okay, so we're looking at the 2018 exam. How many people had a chance to at least do something on it? Oh, Darren, good to see you. Darren, you're taking a bunch of AP exams. I'm just curious what other ones people are taking.
Yeah, I'm taking AP Lang as well as both the AP Physics ones.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, good luck to you. When's your first exam? Whoops. I need to collapse the chat. Okay, there we go. Okay, Noel, hi, hello to you. Okay, so we're going to go over the 2018 exam. And I picked questions that seem to be tricky for people, which neither of these first ones about corn were tricky. So we're going to go on to this one, which had just one of the questions was tricky. So let's, if we could have someone read this. How about Bishop? Can you read this as Edward Randolph giving a report on King Philip's War or Metacom's War in New England, 1676. We're starting early.
Well, I currently can't because you don't have your screen share
Oops.
on.
Okay, let me do that. Thank you. Hold up. Okay, do you all see it? Yeah?
Now we do, ma'am.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Bishop, for reminding me to do that. You'd think by the end of the year I'd be good. Rainbow, do you want to read this one?
No, I had a question.
Okay, sure.
For on AP Classroom, when I go back to review the questions, a lot of the MCQs have explanations, but I noticed for this one it doesn't.
Okay. That may be I didn't notice that because I'm coming in from the teacher view side, I mean, sometimes the explanations from College Board can be helpful, and sometimes they just just rephrase the question as a fact, and so I don't know. I'm sorry that that's not the case. I thought it would be, but oh well. Well, let's look at, okay, back to Bishop. Bishop, could you now that I have shared my screen effectively, could you now read as Edward Randolph, who's making a report about this war?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Various are the reports and conjectures of the causes of the present Indian War. Some impute it to an imprudent zeal in the magistrates of Boston to Christianize those heathen before they were civilized and enjoining them the strict observation of their laws. Some believe there have been vagrant and Jesuitical priests who have made it their business for some years past to go from sachem to sachem to exasperate the Indians against the British and to bring them into a confederacy, and that they were promised supplies from France and other parts to extirpate the English nation out of the continent of America.
Very well done. We'll think of you if we see Edward Randolph listed anywhere. That was great. Okay. The question that gave us most people trouble was this number 3. And who can tell me anything they might remember about King Philip's War or Metacom's War? That's the Indian name. Does anyone remember anything at all about this? 1676. Think of 100 years before the Revolution. Aubrey.
Basically, all I know is that it happened.
Well, that's more than everyone else here.
I do know it was eventually put down, but that's pretty much it.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add there? I know it's been a long time since we've been reading or thinking about this. So what region of the country is it in? You can tell that from the attribution. Bishop?
It was in New England, yes?
Yes, it was in New England. So it's the Puritans.
And it would be against the Iroquois Confederacy?
I don't think it was really the Iroquois. No, it wouldn't have been the Iroquois. Be a little west, like more New York. So these are the Indians that are right there around the Puritan settlements in Massachusetts, say. And they've been getting along, fairly well as things go, but not perfectly. But now they're going to have this war that's going to last for, I think, about a year. And King Philip was the Indian, Metacom was the transliteration of his Indian name, but he was also known as King Philip. A lot of the Indians, the leaders, would have some sort of English name that was either taken on or given to them. I don't know quite how these English names were chosen, but probably just to make communication easier. Yeah, the Indians did lose this war. And before we get into the questions, there's okay, anyone know what sachem to sachem, what a sachem is? Did you kind of like, oh, I don't know what that means? What do you guess it might mean just from the context? They've made it their business for some years to go from sachem to sachem to exasperate the Indians against the English. Walter, what do you think a sachem is?
I'm pretty sure it's the like leader of a Native American tribe.
Yep. The leader. And again, I'm not 100% sure if that's an Indian word that they're kind of transliterating or if it was some English word. It's probably an Indian word. But that was, sort of the word the British used anyway to refer to the top people. And there's a phrase here that you read really well, Jesuitical priests. Anyone know who the Jesuits were? Or anything about the Jesuits that might be appropriate? Let's hear Walter and then Bishop. Walter.
Yeah, they were Spanish Catholic missionaries who were sent to the New World.
I don't know. Do you know, Bishop? I'm not sure they were Catholic. I don't think so.
Or actually, no, I don't think they were just sent to the New World. I think they were like a special type of Catholic.
They were a special type of Catholic. Yeah, Bishop, tell us more here. Got to get our good Catholic kids here to share this. Again.
Did you just call me a Catholic?
Aren't you a Catholic? I thought you were a Catholic.
No, I'm a Presbyterian.
Oh, I've been thinking all year you were Catholic.
I'm
Okay,
a Lutheran,
get
so
our
we don't
nice
know what we're talking about with
Presbyterian kids.
Catholicism.
But
We'll get our nice Presbyterian kids to tell us about Catholicism. Great, take it away.
If I'm correct, Jesuits were kind of priest or member of some other sort of holy order. And I think they're a bit more outgoing than the typical monk would be. They were often missionaries.
Yes.
I believe they're also part of the Inquisition in Spain. But that I haven't really dug into that a whole ton.
And since you're not a Catholic, as I thought, okay, it's good to get these things cleared up here at the end of the year. So, yeah, my understanding is that they were especially a group that was big in education, and they were kind of, some people didn't trust the Jesuits. They thought they were, kind of a breakaway group of Catholics. So some within Catholicism, kept their distance from them. And my understanding is that someone would have to look it up if they were also big in Spain at this time. But they were big in France and in France's New World adventures. There were a lot of Jesuit priests who came over as part of that missionary move among the Indians, that they would live among the Indians, kind of like, modern missionary movements of actually living with the people and getting to know them and getting to know their language and that sort of thing, like Marissa's parents have done, and in Mexico. And, so that was what they were doing. And so here they're saying, are they giving a good view, according to Edward Randolph, of what the Jesuits were doing with the Indians in the Puritan areas? Like Jesuits, I don't believe were big in Britain. Okay. But again, I'm no expert on this. So I don't think they were in Britain. They were definitely in France, may have been in Spain, but this passage doesn't mention Spain at all, does it? It does mention, do you see what other European country it does mention? If you look at the last line. Sana?
I think it mentioned England.
Well, it does mention England, but it says, and that they were promised, like the sachems, the Indians amongst the Puritans, were promised supplies from France. Okay. So they're promised supplies from France. So this is like, France and Britain battling it out over who has power in these New World colonies. But Spain is very far away from New England. Spain is not getting involved in trying to get the Indians of New England to revolt against the Puritans. Okay. So let's look at question 3 was the one that really gave people trouble. The other 2 people got. Okay, and I think this is a poorly worded question. I'll tell you why, but anyway. The Confederacy formed, and they're not saying it was formed, but this is an idea that some people have, that the Jesuits are trying to bring the Puritan Indians, bring them into a confederacy. Okay. The Confederacy formed to exasperate the Indians against the English was motivated primarily by which of the following? Okay. And the choices are fraudulent trade deals between the leaders of the Plymouth colony and the Wampanoags. Okay. Abigail says, nope, nope, nope. That was a favorite wrong answer, but it's not correct. Dispossession of Wampanoag land and threats to their sovereignty. Some people are saying yes. Okay. And let's look on. C, forced religious conversion of Wampanoags by Puritan missionaries. Yeah, there wasn't really forced, although I can tell you a little bit about their missionary stuff. D, intermarriage with the English, which threatened Wampanoag cultural independence. Do you think there was much intermarriage of the British Puritans with the local Indians? There was always, a little bit, but not big. And my guess would be, well, if there were settlers, British settlers in that area, the majority would be Puritans, but there were some who were not. Which group do you think would be more likely to possibly intermarry? Hi, Jamie. Would be more likely the others or the Puritans? Walter.
Well, probably would be the more likely is the French and the Dutch with the natives, since they were known more for trading and associating with them. Whereas the British were just kind of we're just going to keep our distance, and if need be, we'll extend our distance into yours, and then you'll have to keep on going further west.
And they already had wives, right? I mean, they brought over their wives with them. They weren't like the Jamestown colonists who didn't have any wives, or they weren't like the French often did that same thing of the men came over and the women didn't. The traders who were going out and canoeing around with the Indians, getting furs, they often didn't have their wives, and they would marry into the Indian tribes in order to firm up those trading bonds. But so intermarriage was not a big thing with the British, especially the Puritans. There would always be some, and I would bet, there were always some, non-Puritans in these Puritan settlements. A few of them, maybe they had a job as being, what can you say, a security guard, and they might be more likely to marry in, because they might not come over with their wife. Okay, so who's got an idea on which is the correct one here? What are they being motivated by? Abigail.
I would say B. This is actually the one that we got wrong at. So this made a special impression.
Yeah, this was a hard one for a lot of people. Yeah. So I think they're saying they're kind of the Wampanoag would be motivated to join whatever this Jesuit Confederacy was, like their group coming down from France and Canada. That's where the French are. But they would, trickle down into the Puritan areas, or the thought is they're doing that. And because the Wampanoag had lost their land and lost some of their power to govern themselves, they would have been motivated to possibly join a confederacy. But really, I think it's a poorly worded question, frankly, and I think it threw people off because they're not even saying that it really happened. They're saying some believe there have been vagrant and Jesuitical priests who have made it their business. I mean, they're saying this is an opinion that's floating around out there, but they're not really saying this actually happened. So I don't know. I think it was a poorly worded question. Okay, but that's an interesting one. But the Puritans did try to do. They weren't like the Spanish with like forced conversions, but they did do a bit of outreach. And by this time period, this 30 years into the endeavor, there were Puritan Indian towns where the whole town would now be, they called them praying towns. Hi, Madeline. They called them praying towns. These were praying Indians. And they were the Puritan missionaries who were working with them did try to get them to not associate with the other Indians. A big, what can you guess would be a big thing that the Puritan missionaries would try to enforce among the Indians that they would be converting? What sorts of things would they want the Indians to do to show that they had truly converted? Walter?
Maybe they would try to regulate their moral behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Puritans were really big into that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm actually currently reading the Scarlet Letter, and it kind of kind of gives you a perspective into how they were very strict about stuff.
Great. Yeah. And that's a good thing. And also think of things, they would want some outer signs that you've converted, that anyone seeing this Indian tribe that's now living in this praying village, they'll be able to tell that these are not just your heathen Indians off in a village, but they are praying Indians. And what signals might be useful? Suna, what do you think?
They might make them get rid of like their Native American god idols. And they might also want them to dress like the colonizers, maybe.
Yes,
instead of their traditional.
Yes, they wanted them to dress in European style clothing. Remember the John White pictures of the Indians? They were dressed to Europeans' eyes very scantily, okay? Especially the women, to European eyes, this would be really, they're half naked. And so they insisted that the women wear, let's be modest here and all that. So that was very, very good point, Suna. And if they had any little god models, they would want them to get rid of those too, sure. Okay. So that's all we're going to do on that one. Okay, the next one on Joseph Galloway, you all got these questions. I don't think anyone missed anything there. So we're going to skip those. And this one, we had a couple that had some challenges. So let's take a look at these. Okay, what type of document are we looking at here? Aubrey, what type of document?
It would be a primary source.
It's a primary source from 1777. So what else is happening in the world around then? Like not necessarily in 1777, but that time period. So now what's happening? What's the big thing? You should immediately think.
The American Revolution.
The American Revolution, right. This is right. We're fully into it now, okay? And that will, if you get that context, that historical situation, is the term they use. If you get that historical situation, then you're way ahead, okay? So let's have someone read us this and see if we can figure out, but it just says petition for freedom. We want to know freedom for who? Is this the American colonists wanting freedom from Britain or what? Do you want to try reading this one, Rainbow? Can you see it okay in your car? Okay.
Yeah, I've arrived, so then that should be good.
Okay.
The petition of a great number of blacks detained in a state of slavery in the bowels of a free and Christian country humbly showeth that they have in common with all other men a natural and inalienable right to that freedom which the great Parent of the universe has bestowed equally on all mankind, and which they have never forfeited by any compact or agreement whatever. Every principle from which America has acted in the course of their unhappy difficulties with Great Britain pleads stronger than 1,000 arguments in favor of your petitioners. They therefore humbly beseech your honor to give this petition its due weight and consideration, and cause an act of the legislator to be passed, whereby they may be restored to the enjoyments of that which is the natural right of all men.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so who's writing this? What group is writing it? We don't know the individuals, but what's their identifying thing? Anna.
Basically, the Massachusetts colony government, like the people who, like the group that governs all of Massachusetts.
They're writing it?
Obviously, the king is no, it's like it's petitioned like to the council, like
it's to
the
the
people.
council.
So
That's the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's the author?
The author is a great number of blacks detained in a state of slavery in the bowels of a free and Christian country. So like the people, like enslaved people.
Enslaved people. We don't think of Massachusetts being a huge slave area, but it had some slaves, and not as many as in South Carolina, but it had some slaves. And those slaves, we had in a early DBQ, there were several documents, a couple of different DBQs that had documents that were similar. There were petitions of slaves to the Massachusetts Council. So somehow these slaves, I don't know if they somehow learned how to read and write, or if there weren't those anti-reading and writing laws in New England, that could very well be, or if they had friends who were helping them write this. But there were a number, like a half dozen of these petitions to the Massachusetts Council, and asking for getting out of slavery. And okay, so let's go on. The first question and the 8 and 10 gave people trouble. So let's look at these. The ideas, circle that ideas. The ideas expressed in the excerpt contributed most directly to which of the following? So they're not even saying this document led to something, but they're saying the ideas here led to something, okay? And so what's I think what got people mixed up in their wrong answer was, well, maybe this is more the next one that gave people trouble. Like if it says this led to that, they're saying this, in a sense, was like a lead-up cause to something later. So the answer has to be later, right? Something that would happen, but pretty soon after, okay? So the ideas expressed in the excerpt contributed most directly to which of the following? A, the extension of voting rights to African Americans in the North. And again, we went most directly. Bishop says no, because that would be a while off. They probably, who knows when they had voting rights, but it probably wasn't in a couple of years. B, the end of the transatlantic slave trade. Rainbow says, again, most directly. When did the transatlantic slave trade end? Anyone know? Under which president? Or Kaylee, when did the international slave trade end? in the US?
I believe it was it like 1803 or something
A
like that? It was
little,
like early.
little bit later than that, but right, you're in the right presidential term. Yeah. Walter, do you know?
So it was officially passed by Congress, I think, in 1807, went into effect in 1808, and that was during the presidency of Thomas Jefferson.
Right, right. And that was, why did they wait till then? Why not do it right after a petition like this? What was the reason for waiting to that point? Bishop?
Well, I'd imagine the most immediate reason, according to this time, would be they're fighting a war. And then the second one would be, we really don't want to talk about this during the Constitutional Convention, so could we just like put it off by like 25 years, please?
They said 20. They said
20, okay.
you couldn't make a rule until 20 years. And it wasn't like the Constitution said in 20 years you must pass a new law that says no more international slave trade. But it said you can't even think about doing that until 20 years. So it's to Jefferson's, slave owner that he was, it was to Jefferson's credit that the minute 20 years was up, he pushed for them to do that legislation. So again, that's a little too far away from 1777. That's going to be 1807, 1808. Okay, let's look at the next one. C, the mass migration of African Americans from the South to the North. Yeah, because what time period is that? Mass migration of African Americans from the South to the North. Bishop, when's that going to be?
That would be in at least the postbellum era time.
Post Civil War, right? And especially as things are industrializing, and especially as World War I was kicking in, because then there were a lot of industrial jobs and people are, the guys are going overseas. So there was a lot of advertising to encourage African Americans to move north. So that's not direct. Those most direct questions, it's got to be buttoned right up on it. It's got to be right nearby. So we have one more choice. The adoption of plans for gradual emancipation in the North. Yes, right, because that did happen and began happening even before the Constitution. Okay. And continued after the Constitution, but it began happening right away in that first decade, right? Okay, and then 9 didn't seem to give people trouble, so let's look at 10. Which of the following most likely helped to prompt the petition in the excerpt? So what would be, if you had to rephrase this a little more simply so that people wouldn't get mixed up on the timeline here, like, do we want something before or after? How might you rephrase that question? Can you think of a way you might do it? Kaylee.
And before I answer, I would like to apologize for being late. We've been setting up for the senior banquet for like 5 hours, so for Bishop. So
wow. Well, I hope that goes well.
Yes,
is Bishop
thank
there
you.
helping, or is he just gets to waltz in as a senior?
No, he just gets to waltz in as a senior. So the junior class has the responsibility of setting it up for the senior class. But
that's very nice. Very nice.
But yes, I would reword it to say what event occurred before this petition that would have like caused it or led to it being written.
Yeah. Yes, very good. And that would get your mind in the frame of, okay, they're talking about something that comes, if here's our event, we want something before. Right. Okay, so let's go over, Walter's got something to add. Walter.
Can we do an invisible highlight of the natural right?
Okay.
It's in the stimulus.
Okay.
That might help us.
Okay.
On the bottom, the second paragraph. Also, natural and inalienable right could help too.
Yeah,
Hint,
that
hint.
should help. Very, very good. Let's look at our choices and keep what Walter said in mind. Very, very good. So which came before that may have sort of led to this petition? A, American Colonists' Declaration of Independence from Britain. Walter says, yes, that inalienable. Yeah, where do they say it here? The natural right of all men, right? They're really, yeah, has bestowed equally on all mankind. All that it's language. They're borrowing some language from the Declaration of Independence and those ideas. But let's look at the others, because people had trouble. Maybe you can guess which one gave the most wrong choices. B, British promises of land for service in the American Revolution. Yeah, that would just mean blacks might run to the British side and hope that the British would give them freedom and land, but it wouldn't prompt them to petition their own state government. C, the passage of the Stamp Act, a tax imposed on the American colonies by the British Parliament. Yeah, it did come earlier, but it's not really related, is it? It's not related at all to freedom for blacks. Or D, this one was, I will tell you, this was the favored wrong answer by a number of students. The proliferation of religious revivals in the 18th century, commonly referred to as the Great Awakening. And this would be the first Great Awakening, not the second, right? Yeah, why would that not be such a good choice? It came before. Let's hear from Walter.
Well, I think this is the distractor answer. It's not a horrible answer, but I think you
Yes.
have to look at the idea that there's, well, natural right, inalienable rights. And if you pick on that vocabulary, I think A is pretty much an objectively better answer.
Right. Like that might have been the best one. It relates maybe a bit, but the first great, because they don't say first Great Awakening or second, but they're talking about if it's something before, and they're saying 18th century, which is the 1700s, that would be the first Great Awakening. That's people like George Whitefield coming over from the United Kingdom, from Britain and Ireland.
And also, Great Awakening was like more about personal feelings. I mean, maybe there was some sense of like individualism, but I feel like the idea of natural rights is much more associated with the Declaration of Independence than with the religious revival.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was more just, your own taking on religious responsibility for your, yourself or whatever, and becoming a more religious person. But yeah, not so it wasn't like spawning reform movements. Like it wasn't spawning the abolitionist movement or something. Hello there, Jonathan. Wait, is this Jonathan? Yes, Jonathan. Good. Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you. Okay. You haven't missed too much. We're just finished question 10, and we haven't done every question. Okay, the next set, South Carolina Ordinance of Nullification in 1832, really did not give people trouble. Anyone just briefly remind us what this is? What's the South Carolina Ordinance of Nullification? And who was president at this time? 1832, Aubrey. And then we'll get Kaylee.
Wasn't that the nullification crisis during Andrew Jackson's presidency?
Anyone know who, this is a bonus thing, anyone know who was the author of it? Didn't tell everyone at the time that he was, but we could tell. Abigail, do you remember?
I'm just guessing, but probably John C. Calhoun.
John C. Calhoun, right. Yes, he was a rabble rouser and he was from South Carolina. So yeah, he was stirring them all up. And yeah, South Carolina was expecting everyone, all the other states in the South, to join in with them on this. And did anybody else at this time, 1832? No, no one. Everyone said, okay, you want to try that? Go ahead. We're not going to join you. But of course, in 1860, when South Carolina once again starts up with secession, very quickly, numbers of other deep South states joined in. Okay. And so we're not going to do those questions, though. You all got those? Okay. This one you all did pretty well on. This was another one with the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, Seneca Falls Convention. Now, what is it? Notice how they do this question. They tell you this name, and they say it's the Seneca Falls Convention, but what do they not tell you in this attribution? What do you need to know? Kaylee, do you have your hand up for this, or were you going to say something on the previous question?
I was actually going to ask a separate question, but I can wait until
Okay.
someone else answers.
Okay. Bishop, what do they not tell you?
That the Seneca Falls Convention was a convention of feminists.
Yes, early feminists, right? Early women's rights. Right. It doesn't say that. So you might be able to get that from reading this excerpt, but it doesn't say it right away. And you might look at declaration and could help you out with this one. So number 14, some people found this tricky. The language and themes of the excerpt were most directly inspired by what do you think? Let me get something. Okay. Jonathan.
Yeah, so if you just examine the answer choices, Articles of Confederation, no, not really. Didn't really have
It
anything
didn't
about.
inspire much, especially.
Yeah. Along with the Northwest
Yes.
Ordinance, which really didn't have anything to do with rights for
Yeah.
that. So that means that we either have Declaration of Independence or United States Constitution.
Right.
Although if you examine the language closely in the document, I'm pretty sure it's the Declaration of Independence because it talks
Yeah.
about being invested by the Creator,
Mhm.
man, woman equally to man, right and duty.
Right.
The
And
sort of language that it has is very, um, it kind of brings back the Declaration of Independence
right.
a little.
And if they had used the opening of the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, it's like a slam dunk. You would know right away that, oh, it's the Declaration of Independence. They were just, in a sense, rewriting the Declaration of Independence to mean the Declaration of Independence of Women was what they were taking the exact, when in the course of human events becomes necessary for women, for men and women, I mean, they borrowed the language extensively. So this made it a little harder that they didn't tell you here that this was women, and they didn't do that most famous part. Probably this would be like the grievances or the what we're going to do now section. They had a bunch of grievances, just like in the Declaration. Remember when you all read the Declaration real early in the year? So anyway, that was the other questions you all got. Okay, that's moving along. Okay. Oh, this is kind of interesting. And there was one of these, question 19 gave people some challenge. So we're going to go over this. So what sort of document are we looking at here? How can you tell? Kaylee.
It is a secondary because it says historians, and it does say 2010, so that's probably going to be historians.
Right, if they're writing about the Civil War. Weren't too many Civil War veterans, still around in 2010. It was an interesting thing that there were, I don't know if any of you came across this during reading about the Great Depression, where one of the New Deal things that was done, they tried to employ historians, writers, sort of, people studying culture. They try to employ those sorts of people, not just people who might have lost a job at an automobile factory. Okay, they try to employ other types of people. And one thing that some historians did was they did a whole lot of interviews. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of interviews with former slaves during the 1930s. So how old were those slaves probably when they were those former slaves? How old would they have probably been back in slavery? Do the math. They would have had to be at least how old? Kaylee.
So, and then you said this is during like the New Deal.
Yeah, so during the 1930s.
So they would have had to been at least 75 maybe, as long as they weren't, because they would have like been infants if they were just 70.
Right.
So yeah, anywhere from like 75 to like probably, I mean, 75 and up, I guess. Maybe like 75 to 85 would be reasonable.
Right. So they were getting very elderly people who had been slaves way back when. And they interviewed them. They're fascinating to look at. Maybe over the summer you want to look at some. It's a very fascinating thing. But those are primary documents because they're people who lived through the times of slavery, but they were collected in the 1930s. But 2010, there are no more witnesses of that time period. Okay, so I'll read this. These two historians working together. This James McPherson is a really known Civil War guy. I've never heard of the other one. For a few years in the 1850s, ethnic conflict among whites rivaled sectional conflict as a major political issue. The immediate origins of this phenomenon lay in the sharp increase of immigration after 1845. Anyone know immigration from where after 1945? How about Jamie? We need to wake Jamie up and get him to say something. What? Did you hear me, Jamie? Do you need that repeated?
Did you repeat it?
Sure. If he's talking about these historians are talking about the sharp increase of immigration after 1845. Can you think of what groups would be immigrating to the US in great numbers, sharp increase after 1845?
Probably the Chinese, right?
1845. Anyone agree with Jamie? Or have another idea? How about Kaylee? The Chinese would have been coming to like California just a couple of years later, and you're from California, so that's actually a pretty good answer. But California wasn't really part of the US yet.
Was it Germans or Irish?
The Germans and Irish, they would have been coming from Europe over. So I can see where you're coming from, Jamie. But they probably wouldn't have been coming over after 1845, maybe after 1849 or something. They would have been coming to, the Chinese gold rush, the California gold rush. But they're talking a little bit earlier, and they're, if we had more of the context here, they were talking about the eastern part. Okay, Rainbow's got something to say. Let's hear from her.
I was gonna answer the question, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have anything else to share right now? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just lagging. The raise hands is lagging.
Okay. Okay, Bishop, do you have something else to add?
I'm sorry. Did anyone mention that it was probably, like Irish and Eastern Europeans?
Probably not Eastern European. German.
Not yet?
Kaylee mentioned Germans, which...
When did the Eastern Europeans start coming over?
Who knows when the Eastern Europeans, like Polish, Hungarian, Czech, when did they start coming over? Kaylee.
I believe, I think it was after World War One. Is that right?
Well, they continued to for a few years after World War One, yeah, but when did they like start? Bishop.
I just like a few seconds after asking realized how stupid my question was. I'm guessing after World War II, once Stalin had taken over like all of Eastern Europe.
Well, the only problem there was that the communists would not allow people to leave.
And immediately before, during World War II? Or
well,
now I'm
after
confused.
World War II, they wouldn't let people leave, or they tried not to. But we're talking about, when did Eastern Europeans come here in great numbers? They're drawn by factories and bad conditions back home, of course. Abigail, do you have an idea? Just rough time period.
I'm thinking of like post-Civil War, sort of.
Yeah, a little after sort of the last 2 decades of the 19th century, like 1880s, 90s, and then the first, decades of the 20th century. Yeah, right. That was the time when, all the big industry is starting up. I live outside of Pittsburgh, and there's Polish Hill in Pittsburgh, in the little town that was a real industrial town next to my town here in Western PA, out in the rural areas. We're an hour from Pittsburgh. There was an industrial town right below mine, like 2 miles away. And they had a big factory. It drew lots of Eastern European immigrants. And in that town, there were like 4 different Catholic churches. There was the Italian Catholic Church. There was the Hungarian Catholic Church. There was the Polish Catholic Church, and probably, sort of an Irish oriented Catholic church. But they had all these different Catholic churches in this one small town with about 5,000 people. So that would have been the time period, the end of the 19th century, when big industry is kicking up, lots of industrial jobs, and these people were ready to work hard, and they probably wouldn't join unions, or that people hoped they would not join unions. Okay, let's go on to finishing this. Okay, so the immediate origins of this phenomenon lay in the sharp increase of immigration after 1845. What was the precipitating event if they say 1845 and we're thinking Irish? Walter.
The Irish potato famine.
Irish potato famine, right. And they went other places too, but a lot came to America. The average quadrupled in the 1830s, so it had already been growing a decade before. But even this paled in comparison with the immigration of the late 1840s. During the decade 1846 to 1855, more than 3 million immigrants entered the U.S., equivalent to 15% of the 1845 population. This was the largest proportional, and I'm going to ask you what proportional means here, the largest proportional increase in the foreign-born population for any 10-year period in American history. Equal in significance to the increase in the foreign-born population were changes in its composition. And again, we'll wonder where are they coming from. Okay, what does that mean, the largest proportional increase? They've given us this number and they say it's 15% of the 1845 population. What does that mean, that term proportional? Kaylee?
So basically saying the proportion of the immigrants to the proportion of the population, like of America, like that proportion, it was increased large enough, like the largest.
Yeah.
And I also found something on the practice exam which kind of goes along with what we were saying. The correct answer, I think the reason I remember this, I had said that I think maybe the English and the Irish had immigrated the most from 1901 to 1921. I posted it in the chat, but it said it was the Poles and the Italians that were moving the most during this era.
Right. Well, not during this era. They're talking about 1845.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so
the Poles and Italians would have been real big at the end of the 19th century, turn of the century time. That was the big era for them. And also Russians were coming over, and Russian Jews and that sort of thing. But yeah, they weren't people from Poland. So it probably was a handful. In this time period, we're talking about 1845 to 1850. Okay. So the conflict described, did I finish reading? Yeah, I did. This is a question that gave trouble, 19. The conflict described in the excerpt is most similar to conflict in what other period? Okay, so this is one of these ones they're asking you, not just what's the info, but what is it most like? Okay, so we've got to see the one you might be able to make an argument, but which is the best, has the most connections. Okay, A, the period from after the 7 Years' War through the 1760s. We're talking about immigration. No, not a lot of, I agree with Darren there. Okay. B, the period from after the War of 1812 through the 1820s. And again, we want to think in terms of immigration. Wasn't a huge time. They're pointing that in the 1830s there was starting, because there were some bad potato famine years in the 1830s too. Just not quite as bad. Okay. C, the period from after the First World War through the 1920s. Bishop is raising his hand. What do you think, Bishop? No, he wasn't. He was not raising his hand. Okay. Or C, the period from after the Second World War through the 1950s. So what would be a time of heavy, or maybe even to think of it in terms of conflict, ethnic conflict among whites? That's what we have to really look at. That might have to do with immigration. This question was really hard for people. So now, which one do you think might make the most sense? We're looking for ethnic conflict among whites, but they're from different ethnic groups, and it has to relate to immigration.
I would say maybe D, because a lot of them had a containment policy following the Second World War because of the fear of communism. So that might have caused
the reason that doesn't work, we need immigration into the US. A lot of immigration, big proportion of immigration coming in that people are not going to like. Now, people were worried about, Russian spies. Those were small numbers. Those weren't like 1 million, are coming over. They were more, in fact, during the 50s, they would be more worried about Americans, real Americans, becoming communist than hordes of communists coming into our country. And again, by that time, all the communist countries being given the directive from Russia or the Soviets were told, you don't let your people out. You don't let them leave. Keep them in your country. So they weren't coming over. Hordes of communists were not escaping from Russia or Poland or, Eastern European countries, because they weren't allowed to. When they were allowed to, they did start coming over, and that did cause some challenges, but that's earlier. Bishop, which one do you think makes the most sense?
I'm thinking it's C, because I remember in the Red Scare, a lot of the worries were about these radical communist immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And then they started because of, and these are among whites, so we're not talking about, say the Asian, the Chinese Exclusion Act. If we want to get something that's going to line up, really well with the passage, and that's in the mid 1920s, they started making those really restrictive laws about immigration, So that is the best answer, but that was a tricky one. So I'd recommend all of you kind of go over, get some lists of the peak immigration times and where were people coming from. That's a really important theme in APUSH. And I bet you that'll be something you can share about, on Friday afternoon when we can't be specific about questions, but you can say, yep, Mrs. Richman was right. There were questions about immigration from different time periods, and I got it because I reviewed it. So you could let us know things like that in the exam. See if they have some immigration questions, very common. Kaylee?
What would be the average number of multiple choice questions? I know you have to take in part the free response questions, but that would be like in the 4 to 5 range on the test. I just wanted to see what I should be like aiming for.
You were in that range on this test. When I look at the results for the class and the kids who took this, all of you were in the top 50th percentile, 50%, like you got 50% or more of the questions. And then there's a group, the largest group got 75 to 100% of the questions right. You were in that top group, Kaylee. And most of you were. I think that was like getting like 40 or 41 questions and up, puts you in that top 25%. And that's if you get that many, if you get in that group, you probably are going to get a 4 or 5, or very likely. You can use those exam calculator things. Maybe I'll put that up again this week, the link to that. Or you could just Google for it, exam. I forget what they're called, exam calculators, I think, for a push exam. And you can put in and see, like, if I get 49 questions out of 55 right, and I do, say, in the middle range, like I get a 3 on my LEQ and I get a 3 on my DBQ, what do I get? And you can do that sort of thing, and that can be helpful. So yeah, I think the MCQs are like 40% of your overall grade. So it really does push you up, and especially, like different kids are different. Some kids can really write fast on an AP exam, and other kids they need it, if they gave me 2 hours, I could do a really good job, but it's just a little tougher to write a lot on the spot when you've just been given the question. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Okay, you all did really well on the Gettysburg Address questions, so we're not going to go over those. Oh, this next one. This is a historian, and he's writing about 1865. And you didn't have real trouble on these questions. I mean, some kids got it wrong, but not too many. But I wanted to show you the photograph he's referring to. So this one says, in August 1865, the photographer Marcus Ormsby took a formal portrait of several groups of craft workers in their different shops. At the center of the photograph, at Outcault's carpentry shop, stands the conventional artisan trio of master, journeyman, and apprentice, still at the heart of the city's workshop world. Yet, class differences mark these craftsmen's every feature. Brooding above everyone, a new brick manufactory, like a big factory, seals off its employees from the street and from public view. Small shop and large enterprise converge. New York remains a blend of old and new. Okay, let me show you that photograph. Hold up, it's going to take me just a second to find it. I mean, I have it, but okay, here we go. Okay, can you see this page, or do I need to shift over? Do I need to share this page? Okay, hold up. I'm going to stop sharing that and start. Okay. Okay, can you see? Wait, did I just lose it? Can you see it now? You can see it? Okay. I'm not seeing it now because it's behind my pictures of you. Let me take it down here. Okay, so this is the actual photograph he's talking about. Can you see the things? This was a staged photograph. It wasn't like all these people were just out looking at people going by. This was a staged photo that he set up, and all these people are out posing for this photographer. This was not a candid shot. And can you see where the big manufactory that's walled off is? It's back here. Oiled clothing. This would be like waterproof clothing. Shirts, drawers, overalls, truck covers. It's back here and it has no windows. So that's a big new factory, but here these are more your smaller places of business. Anyway, I thought that you might find that interesting. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that and go back to the other. Here we go. Share. Okay, now we're back. You can all see the questions again. So I just thought it was interesting to see, like, oh, what a real historian could pull out of one photograph. You know, it's kind of interesting. But you all really did pretty well in these. So we're not going to go over these ones. Oh, anyone recognize who this guy is? He's important to know. Kaylee, who's this guy?
Is it Boss Tweed?
Boss Tweed, yes. It is very good as an A-pusher to recognize Boss Tweed. Anyone know anything that he did or was known for? And can you tell who drew this cartoon? Jamie, are you raising your hand here? No? Okay. Abigail, was you raising your hand? Yeah.
He's a really famous political machine that basically just bribe people for votes. And I think he's
Yes.
involved with the Tammany Hall.
Tammany Hall, exactly, which is in New York, right? And yeah, and he's always shown as very fat. He was maybe a little bit overweight, but he wasn't grossly fat. But who is the cartoonist here? Do you recognize his style? He does have his signature there. Kaylee, can you tell who it is?
I saw his signature, but Thomas Nast, is that right?
Thomas Nast, yeah. Did you recognize that too, Jonathan? Thomas Nast, yep. He's the big one from the late 19th century, and he hated this guy. And yeah, and anyone know what this round thing is? It says the ballot, but what is it? Like physically, what is that thing? We did discuss this in a cartoon conversation. Do you recognize what it is? Anyone want to take a guess? Madeline, what's your guess on what this thing might be?
Like a voting box.
Yes, this is the new latest technology on voting machines. This was the high-tech thing. You know how well, I don't know if you've heard that, you know, if people are worried about mail-in ballot voting, or they're worried about, you know, digital voting, that they can rig the machines. They're not, we need paper ballots so we can really count honestly. There are concerns about that today. And in this time, this is like after the Civil War, they were really concerned about voting, that there was illegal voting. There were voting not machines, boxes where you'd put your vote in, but it was like a wooden box, so you couldn't see the ballots inside. And you couldn't see that, oh, there was a little drawer at the bottom, and they had it stuffed with the proper ballots, and that'd be what they'd count. So this was a glass globe, see-through, so you could see the person put in their ballot, and there it is. So the idea was it was transparent. You could tell you could tell who they voted for too. And the secret ballot of people like going into a little voting booth. Have any of you voted yet? Are any of you 18? Yeah. You didn't vote, Bishop? You weren't of age to vote this year?
I will be next year or this year
Okay.
in November, but
Okay. But nowadays you go in, you're in a little booth, a little privacy screen. No one knows who you're voting for. We just take that for granted. In these earlier years, you voted publicly. Like if you were voting for a certain candidate, their ballot, their little paper ballot ticket would be a different color. Everyone would know who you were voting for. It was a public thing. That's one of the reasons. I always tell kids it's probably one of the reasons. I usually don't see it written up, but probably one of the reasons that many people thought that women shouldn't vote, because these were really rough and tumble things. People would get into fistfights over voting because they could see who you were voting for, and they didn't like it, they'd beat you up. And I think they thought, no, we don't want our women going into this thing. It was part of the concern. But yeah, this is the new fancy ballot box, but in counting there is strength. He's going to count it and it's going to come out in his favor. So, but these questions you all did pretty well on. Okay. Okay, these Easter bonnet. I don't know if anyone remembers, this was like the last cartoon we did, Puck magazine cover. And they tell you way up here what the year was, 1901. Okay, Columbia's Easter bonnet. What type of bonnet is she wearing? If you were doing a cartoon analysis of this, what would you say? Anna.
Yeah, I feel like this cartoon is she's wearing a hat that looks like a ship, which is kind of says world power. And then if you look, the steam kind of says expansion. And so it's basically saying that America is trying on its like abilities as a world power for size and expanding.
Right. We're into expansion. We're going to be a world power, show our weight around. Yeah. Okay, so everyone got question 29 about this, but let's look at this one. 30 gave people trouble. Which of the following most directly, that is such a common phrase, which of the following most directly led to the circumstances illustrated by the image? Okay, now we know the image is from 1901. What do they mean by most directly led to? Are we looking for something that came before or after? Walter.
Something before. So,
Something before.
I mean, World War One not going to happen yet. So C is wrong. 19th Amendment, I think, was also after, so that would be wrong as well. And then Plessy really does not have anything to do with it. So I think A is the only logical answer here.
But C, about the U.S. contributions to the Allied effort in the First World War, was the favorite wrong answer. So again, I think people were getting mixed up. You've got to think of the time. Again, they're talking about an event. What leads to it came before. So you can't have it be something that came after did not cause something earlier. Okay. The biggest rule of cause and effect, kids, something later can't cause something that happened earlier. Bishop?
Sorry, earlier question.
Okay. Do you still want to say it, or did you already, okay, great. Did you have something else to say, Abigail? Are you okay? Okay. And likewise, this one is also the same sort of thing. Are they talking about something before or after? 32, the developments referenced by the image most directly contributed to the US involvement in, okay, do they want something that comes before 1901 or something that comes after? Which do they want? How about Jonathan? You look like you're thinking about it.
Because it says these developments lead or contribute to something, it means these developments, what, like after? What
So
events
we
or
want
events?
something after 1901. Okay, very, very good. Okay, so let's look at our choices, and we can knock out any that came before 1901. Competition with Russia in opening trade with Japan. I mean, there was that, with Teddy Roosevelt winning the Nobel Prize for negotiating between Russia and Japan, but it wasn't really competition with Russia. That wasn't what that was about. We'd already opened up trade with Japan way back when, in 1850s. Okay, so let's say that's not it. The suppression of an independence movement in the Philippines. Jonathan says yes. Yes. Good, good, good. But let's read the next one, because the next one was another favorite answer. The first one was to acquisition of territory from Mexico through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. When did that take place, roughly? Anyone know? Abigail?
Oh, I think the end of 1840s or
Yeah.
1850, can't remember.
Yeah, it was like after that Mexican War, right? And which people, they get mixed up with the Spanish American War. People sometimes get mixed up with the Mexican War. They think our war over Cuba with Spain was the same as the Mexican War because Spain had owned Mexico, but they're not the same. And so that was a favorite answer, but that was before, and we need something that comes after. So that Philippines, that has to do with directly contributed to, that has to do with us wanting to keep the Philippines. We just won it, and now they want to be free from us. They decided to fight them. So that would be the answer there. Okay. Okay, the only one that gave trouble here was this question. Okay, so this is the Progressive Party platforms. We're looking at a primary document, right? 1912. Okay, so let's just, how about Madeline? Could you read us this little excerpt from the Progressive Party platform, which is probably much longer than this? Okay. Can you read us this, Madeline? Wait, I think Madeline just froze up. Okay, well, how about Jamie? I want you to say something here. So why don't you read us the...
Sorry, I'm back. My computer's like glitched out.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll have Madeline do it then. Okay, so Madeline, read us the...
Okay. The National Progressive Party, committed to the principle of government by a self-controlled democracy, expressing its will through representatives of the people, pledges itself to secure such alterations in the fundamental law of the several states and of the United States as shall ensure the representative character of the government.
Okay, so a very sort of general statement. I'm sure they had many more specific things, but let's look at this question, because a lot of people got this one wrong. Which of the following groups is most credited with advancing progressivism? So by advancing, they're not necessarily saying they were I don't know, what can you say? They might not have been the legislators, the movers and shakers who were passing laws or something, but they were advancing the cause. They were pushing for it. Okay. Madeline, what do you think here?
Probably the agricultural workers. See.
Oh, okay. Well, we got to think of what are the progressive reforms. This is different from the populist platform, which I think you might be more thinking of. The populists, that would be farmers. If you see populist, farmer, you salivate and say farmers, okay? But progressives, which built on a lot, they liked a lot of the populist ideas, but it was a different group of people. And so this would be an important thing to get straight on. Yeah, now I can see how people would be kind of conflating the populists and the progressives. I mean, it's not like everyone knew at the time, oh, yes, I'm a populist. I'm in this group. No, I'm a progressive. I'm in this group. This is kind of a label given a little bit later by historians. But they do, in part, they're different because the farmers were not involved in the progressive movement, particularly. So let's look at our choices. Anarchist activists, most credited, like everyone says, oh yeah, this group was really important in those wonderful progressive things. Walter says no. Recent immigrants. Yeah, they're too recent to be very involved in politics. Agricultural workers, which again, that would be the populist. Populist equals farmers. It was other people too, but mainly farmers. And middle-class women. That's the answer, middle-class women. But all the other answers were favored by many people, including the anarchist activists. What do you know about middle-class women? Why would they be particularly noted here as being pretty important or credited with being involved? Abigail.
So one significant figure would just be Jane Addams because she advanced like the whole house in, I think it was Chicago, probably.
Chicago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In one of the excerpts, I think she encouraged like middle class women and also people, people who have attended colleges to, like have this serve as an opportunity for them to contribute to society, which, align with the democratic ideas of the government at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Excellent. And a lot of middle-class women, like agricultural worker women, would not be going to college, but these were middle-class women who were going to colleges, but they were middle class. They might not be looking for a job, a typical job. They might want to get paid for something, but they wanted to be involved in good causes, okay? They wanted to volunteer their time for good causes. And so they would get really involved in, okay, we're going to fight against child labor. We're going to fight against, who can name another progressive cause at this time? So this is 1912. So around this early 1900s, what would be some other progressive type causes? Suna?
Abolitionism was a big one at this time, I think.
In
And was
1900?
temperance.
In 1900, abolitionism? I thought it
Wasn't
had been
it the March
abolished.
on Washington? Or was that the 1800s?
Slavery ended at the end of the Civil War. So abolitionism is dead.
Oh wait,
That's
African
done.
American rights. That's what it's called. Abolitionism isn't there
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah. Abolitionism is specifically about abolishing slavery as an institution. That was done. They didn't get full rights. So yes, it's kind of interesting because while there were Black leaders like Booker T. Washington, Du Bois, they were coming up and they were kind of, especially Du Bois would be kind of the progressive version of civil rights, but it wasn't a big civil rights. Progressives weren't that into civil rights. And Abigail, do you have another example of a progressive
Yeah, I can think of prohibition as well as like the movement for women's suffrage, I think.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
uh,
women's getting the vote, right?
yeah. And for
Exactly.
prohibition, yeah, because it seemed as like a such a destructive thing to the family, alcohol. So like they
Mhm.
were really active on the platform.
Yeah, yeah, women were very involved in that. And uh yeah, good. And Kaylee, you've got something else?
I was actually gonna say kind of a way to think about it. The middle class women were the ones kind of throughout American history who were like the temperance movements and things like that.
Mhm.
The middle class wasn't necessarily saying it for themselves, but kind of more for the lower class. They didn't want them to
Yeah,
drink as much.
right, right. We can handle our alcohol at our fancy parties, but we don't want those workers to be drinking. Yeah. And so yeah, it was kind of what can you say, a do-gooder mentality, which is often not a positive, like you, if you were really involved in some social cause that you really believed in, you would not want to be called a do-gooder because it's kind of denigrating your good deed you're trying to do. Okay. Um, but some people who would have criticized progressive reforms might have said, oh, it's a bunch of middle class women who are do gooders. That would have been a way to denigrate this group of women. And, but yeah, they were pretty involved. Okay, I think we have time for one more set of questions here. Okay, here's one that I bet no one knew. This was a very hard set. This whole thing about it's written by a historian, so we know it's a secondary source. The Black Chicago Renaissance. Had anyone ever heard of the Black Chicago Renaissance? Bishop, you had?
I actually have because of
Okay.
my AP English studying. It was in one of the passages. If I'm correct,
Okay.
it was basically like an artistic and cultural thing that
Mhm.
started in Chicago amongst
Yes.
like the black culture.
Yeah, yeah. Has anyone ever heard of the Harlem Renaissance? Yes, John, that's much more well known. The Chicago, the Black Chicago Renaissance is not so well known. And I was looking over some stuff just this evening. It's kind of interesting to look up. And some historians look and they compare it to the Harlem Renaissance and they say, oh, the Harlem Renaissance, everyone knows about that. It's covered in US history courses. Teachers bring it up. You learn about it. But they don't talk about the Chicago Renaissance, which was just a little bit later. The Harlem Renaissance is like 1920s after World War One, up till the Depression. A lot of writing, poetry, music in New York City. That's where Harlem is. And that was the African American area of New York City. And but Chicago, this is big in the 19 kind of like with the start of the Depression, 1930s through 1950 is the time for this Chicago thing. So I want to just let me read this one. This is by a historian who wrote a whole book about it. Beginning in the 1930s. So again, think in your mind, what big events happened in the 1930s? What pops in your mind first? 1930s equals, Jonathan?
Great Depression.
Great Depression. Okay, if it started in the 1930s, it might have been influenced by the Great Depression. Beginning in the 1930s and lasting into the 1950s, Black Chicago experienced a cultural renaissance. Chicago had become a major destination for Black Southern migrants. Okay, that's post World War One, and that continued on, so that Chicago was a big place they went. It was also an urban industrial center. This fact that it was industrial, whereas New York, Harlem was not industrial. This fact gave a unique working class and internationalists, I don't know why internationalists, but a working class perspective to the cultural work that would take place there. The desire to live freely in the metropolis continued to characterize the aspirations of migrants as second wave Chicago migrants arrived. The 1930s and 40s witnessed a resurgence of Black working class political radicalism. Okay, if we're talking about the 1930s and 40s and you hear the word radicalism, what do they mean? They don't mean radical anti-war Vietnam War protests, right? That's later. What do they mean if they say radicalism and it's in this time period, like starting the 1930s? What are they talking about? What's that sort of a code word for? Bishop, what's your guess?
Communism?
Yeah, communism. Were you going to say that, Abigail, or did you have another idea? It means communism. Okay, that's what they're talking about. And this was a time when many intellectuals, not just among African Americans, but many university people, remember that those cartoons about the New Deal that showed all the guys doing what the cartoonist was viewing as really stupid things. They're throwing money out of the wagon and they have these graduation hats on. That was saying there are a lot of leftists in our universities. Okay, there's a criticism today that say the Ivy League is just full of leftists and communists and anti-Zionists and anti-Semitics. You know, that's a criticism of these universities as a group today, and it was a criticism of them back at this time. Okay, and it was true then and now. Okay, so, you know, I don't know if any of you caught that while you were reading this. You're probably just reading through it. But I think, you know, you probably just wouldn't have had any background because the Chicago Black Renaissance is not really talked about, but it is kind of interesting. There's some really interesting artwork, but it was really inspired by a Marxist perspective. So partly the whole workers thing, these artists themselves and writers themselves, would they have been workers? Would they have been working in the factories and fighting for their rights and they became an artist? Or would they probably be artists who really fell in love with communist ideas and wanted to foment rebellion among the workers, who took on the workers' cause, but they weren't workers themselves? Which way do you think it was? Do you think these artists and cultural writers, were they, you know, working in the Chicago meatpacking plants or, you know, whatever the industries were now by this time? Or were they intellectuals? You know, they're artists. That's their main work. That's what they do. But because there are workers around them, they're writing and drawing about them. Kaylee?
I would say they probably were artists that were trying to like get the communist or starting to get communist ideas. Well, there was one line that says a desire to live freely in the metropolis that kind of I feel like lends to that.
Yeah. Yep. And that was what it was. So a lot of times this has happened. Marx was very surprised that the workers, the people who are actually working like jobs, like the original Marxist idea was the worker is so exploited. We've got to impress upon him how oppressed he or she is and bring out the worker. Well, that's what we're doing this all for, is for the workers. But the people actually leading communist revolutions, and this was true in China too, Abigail, you may know, were usually not the workers. They would be sort of the radical intellectuals, okay, who found these ideas very enticing. And they were going to encourage the workers, you know, to get involved. So I think, you know, all those things came up. So let's do one question from this and I'll let you go. Thank you all for hanging in. Okay, let's look at 38. Which of the following most likely contributed to the decline of the political radicalism, which again translate to communism, belief in communism, referred to in the excerpt. And I think now that you know that that's what political radicalism at this time period means, you'll get it, okay? A, so what contributed to their decline? The drafting of young men to fight in Vietnam. And they're talking 1950s. It's way too far. It would not have caused their decline in the 1950s. B, racial discrimination in the United States Armed Forces during the Second World War. They might have been very upset at that, but it's not going to cause the decline of the radicalism. Anti-communist measures during the Cold War. Bingo. That's it. Okay, that's the answer. If there's radical communism in the 30s and 40s, and oh, don't worry, here comes Joe McCarthy and the congressional committees that were examining this sort of thing. Okay, so that would have put a damper on it. Wouldn't have stopped it completely, but they've got to be a little more quiet. And then another choice, an interesting one, neglect of Black artists and culture during the New Deal. Because the New Deal, did you know that the New Deal hired a lot of artists? They put a lot of artists to work. Again, they were trying to help a wide range of people. And I don't know if they neglected the Black artists, but I would think that would make them, they did not, because I was reading about this tonight. There was an art center, like a famous art center in the south side of Chicago where these people were living, that was given funding by the New Deal. And it was specifically in this Black area, and that became sort of the nexus. That became where they came together and had art exhibits and that sort of thing. So that can't be it, because that wouldn't have caused the decline. They were actually, the New Deal was, in that case, supporting them. Okay. But yeah, the anti-communist measure would be like, okay, we got to be a little quiet about this communist stuff. Okay. Okay. And everything I looked up about it, immediately everyone said, oh yeah, they had a lot of Marxist communist ties. This was a thing. And so these artists who were not workers were doing all these big murals and paintings of workers and showing them in, that it was oppressive. That would have been their thing. Okay. So good. And that's, wait, I have to show you one thing. This one about Franklin Roosevelt, you all did fine on this. But I wanted to where is I wanted to show you a famous series of paintings. So this is called, this is Franklin Roosevelt's State of the Union Address, 1941. Are we involved in World War II yet? January 1941? Aubrey says no. Does anyone know when Pearl Harbor happened? Jonathan.
December
of that year. So this is January, and we have to go a whole year before Pearl Harbor. So this is like right before. And here he says, in the future days, which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human freedoms. This is called the 4 freedoms. Okay, it became like a catchphrase. The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms, what's Franklin Roosevelt thinking about? Why does he keep saying everywhere in the world? What's he thinking about? What's he trying to get everyone else to think about? Kaylee.
Is he talking about the like creeping communism and like the war that's starting in Europe?
Well, not creeping communism. He's talking about creeping Hitlerism.
Well,
Yeah, the Nazis. Um, World War II has started. It's going on in Europe. And he's talking about that. That's why he keeps saying, he wants the US to be more involved in the world. Okay, third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings, which will secure to every nation, not just the US, a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. He's looking for the future, like once this war is concluded, and it probably will only be concluded if we join in, guys, he's saying. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world. Okay? And I wanted to show, I'm going to have to stop sharing this, and I'm going to share one other screen. Okay. It's not this one I want to show you. This was a set of, can you all see this? This was a set of paintings by a very prominent illustrator of the mid-20th century. Does anyone recognize his work? He wasn't considered like an artist, like would be in an art history class, but he was a very prominent illustrator. Bishop?
I recognize it, and I knew the artist at one point, but I can't remember his name now.
His initials are NR. NR. Ooh, who is it? And here's like that's just the four freedoms written up. There's Roosevelt. Okay, hold up. Okay, this is like looking up. This is freedom of speech. You might be able to see his name here. Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell. I love Norman Rockwell. He's really charming. I actually owned several books, about him and his works. He was an illustrator. He was a really marvelous, amazing illustrator of Americana, of American life. He lived in a small town in Western Massachusetts, and he used all the townspeople. Like if you were from that town, you would recognize all your neighbors in his pictures, because obviously he was really drawing from real people, unique people. And, this is his one, each according to the dictates of his own conscience. This is freedom of religion. And he's got quite a few. Here's someone with like a little rosary beads. Freedom from want, Thanksgiving dinner. He's like these classic American scenes from the mid-20th century. Anna?
I also loves Norman Rockwell. In fact, I feel like actually has multiple pictures. There's one, I don't know what it is, but there's this one that my mom has. It's like a mother waking up her children in the morning, and then I've got one with a girl looking in a mirror comparing herself to a movie star, and then there's one more my sister has where a girl has a black eye because she got into a fight in school, and then her mom was at the principal's office looking at her like, "Did you do that?"
Right. Yeah, a lot of his are really humorous. They were often covers of a weekly illustrated magazine, New York Post. And these became, okay, I'm going to stop sharing here. These paintings of the Four Freedoms became really popular. The US government took them on once the US got involved in the war. They took them on and they sold them to people. You could buy the prints of the Four Freedoms as shown by Norman Rockwell. and he just did these his own idea, and they sold like hotcakes. Everyone wanted these. They really spoke to Americans at that time. But that's all we have time for here. You all did very well. But again, some of them were tricky, sometimes because of the tricky wording. I was wishing we could talk about the one about Students for a Democratic Society, because I'm reading a book about groups related that grew out of them, but we don't have time, and you all did well on those anyway. So any other final thoughts, questions? Yes, Hannah?
I'm so sad because this is our last class before the APUSH exam, and it's like, where
It
did the
is.
year go? We're almost
Group
done.
hug, kids, for everyone.
Yes, group hug. Yes, group hug.
As I hope you
Yeah,
all do
but yeah,
super on
good
Friday,
with you
and
guys.
stay
I really
alert.
hope we can. I hope we can stay connected over summer because I do not want to lose contact with you guys. That was so sad.
And I hope to see some of you at the AP party. And I know, Abigail, you probably can't come, but if you happen to be in the States, have you ever been to the US, Abigail?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, you could come to the AP party. Just fly over. Hey, I had Sana come here and stayed at my house overnight. We're hoping she'll come to next year's AP party when her brother is graduating. But who knows? What year are you in school, Abigail? How many more years of high school do you have?
Um, this is supposed to be my 10th grade, so I'm technically a sophomore right now.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, maybe we'll try to get you to fly over from from China to the US for the AP party when you graduate. We have a graduation ceremony at the party. That's always fun. I'm trying to get Don't you think Bishop could come? He's a graduate. I think he should come, but he probably won't. It's a little far of a trip from Alabama. Anna, final comment?
Okay, so I'll have to see if I can go to the AP party because it's 4.5 hours of driving, and so it's gonna be a lot. But I'm really, really hoping I can go. I'm probably just gonna listen to music or audiobook or watch a movie all the way there.
There you
So
go.
we'll see if I go.
It'll pass the time. And Walter, I have had many people from California come, so you have no excuse. And Ethan too. And Jonathan, you could all come. You could hitch a ride. Abigail.
I was actually going to ask about like the FAQs on the exam.
Okay.
So I was looking at the rubric, and I think there's this thing called the complexity point.
Yes.
So basically you can earn that by I think connecting the current evidence to like things across timelines, like to
That's
another
one way.
unity.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, are there any general tips on how to get that point?
Well, for the DBQ, one way to earn that is by doing kind of a deep dive analysis of at least 4 documents. Okay? Which you have usually done about 8 documents or more, however many documents there were. You have done that in spades with every one, Abigail. So that would be a very easy route for you to. I think, Abigail, you will get the complexity point. You will get that. But yeah, showing that you can think across times and all that. You do that in spades. Yeah, Jonathan?
One final comment. I don't want to drag
Okay.
the class
Keep
on
us
so
up
much.
to the.
But for the AP College Board, where we have the practice exams, speaking about
Mhm.
FRQs, so do we have to grade, or I know that the MCQs, we could get it graded by the College Board. How
Mhm.
exactly should we be grading our own FRQs? Like, what exactly do you
If you do
suggest is
those
the best way?
practice ones,
Yeah, if we do the practice ones, what's the best way to know, like, how
I
we did?
did. I wish I had time to look at them, and I'm afraid I just don't. My
Right.
other job has just started up these past 2 weeks, and I'm feeling really swamped and behind. I see homeschooling families in Pennsylvania for evaluation meetings, and somehow foolishly I thought I would have time to also, give full time to APUSH, and I'm just, I'm like seeing a family with 4 kids, and then I have to write up a report on each of the kids afterwards and that sort of thing. So I don't have time. There is, the rubric, like I post when I make my comments on your essays, that's what they're going to be looking at. And I know sometimes if I don't go in and check them, I know sometimes you can't see it, what you wrote. Because I was thinking you could swap them around to one another and say, do you think I got the points for this? But, the main thing they're going to be looking at contextualization. That's the point you all want to make sure you get. Put that right in the beginning. Then they're looking at, do you have a good thesis that has a lot of meat to it and a lot of detail to relate to the question? Are you taking a stand? And hopefully the way you phrase it's going to help you outline, organize the rest of your essay. You're always very strong on that, Jonathan. And then they're going to be looking for evidence, in the LEQs, you want to at least have, 3 different types of evidence, or 2 as a minimum, specific examples. 4 will help you earn that complexity point. And you're usually very, very strong on that. So just the usual, show that you're thinking historically, that you understand that, you're not going to say something about cause and effect, that something 20 years later caused something that happened 20 years earlier. You're not going to do that. You're going to do it in the right order. You're going to, all those sorts of things, what they're looking for. And they know that it's a first draft, that you were under time pressure, that you hadn't seen the question 3 days in advance and had it all planned out. They know that you're being compared to other kids who are also facing those same tricky parameters. Okay. And so they're going to be the way they actually grade them on the exam, when the graders, they develop their scale, they actually give the teachers who are going to be grading the exams, they say, okay, here are 10 different, or maybe say for the LEQ, they'd say, here are 6 different essays. Here's one that earns a 6. Here's one that earns a 5. Here's one that earns a 4, 3, 2, 1, and probably a 0. And they give them those, and they make them see, like, how are they different? How are they similar? Why is this one better than that one? They have training on those. And they get those by just literally picking out of the pot. They pick out sample essays, like 50 essays out of the ones that are submitted, and they rank them. The people who know how these should be done, they rank them into, best, next, and assign them those, they see, did they hit these points? Did they earn the points? And then they come up with, okay, this is a great this is the best sample 6 out of 6 that we could show the other teachers who are going to be grading essays. And that's how they come up with it. But they choose them from actual, they come up with that scale, or this is what we're aiming for, by looking at actual essays they get. Okay. So, and sometimes some essays are much harder than others, So again, on Friday, when you have the choice in the LEQs, you have 3 possible ones. Choose your strongest suit. Choose your one you think will be your best. You can write about the easiest. Ethan, you've got your hand up.
I was wondering how to best tackle a question if I'm not familiar with the topic they're talking about, maybe unprompted SAQs or the LEQ.
Okay, I did talk about this a lot in my updates, so you can go back and read all my updates, Ethan, and I do address this because it's a common problem. Now, again, with the LEQs, you're going to choose your best one. So you should hopefully choose the one you do know something about, not the one that you know nothing about, okay? The SAQs, the short answer questions, you may be hit with one that you don't know that much about, but think again about, if you don't know, say you've never heard of this specific topic they're bringing up, think about what what do I know that happened at that time? Like, what can I bring in as I can say something about that? It happened at the same time, and I think it's kind of related, maybe kind of sort of, do that sort of thing. The more specific you can be, like if you're real general and say, this was a very important issue in this time period, you won't get any points. They want people to be
Wait, so
specific.
is it better to like make something up than like leave it mostly blank?
Well, do not make something up, but don't be afraid if you sort of have an idea like, okay, I know something about this time period. Okay, it was right after World War I is the period they're talking about. Okay, what were the big issues going on in the 1920s? And you might think immigration, this and that. If you can bring in some connection to something else, that'll probably help you and sort of get your ideas going. The Roaring Twenties, the immigration problems, passing laws about it, the oh gosh, what was the case called? The famous case about evolution and creation in the 1920s. I'm blanking. Sana.
Scopes monkey
The
trial.
Stopes monkey trial. If you just try to brainstorm anything about that time period and see if you can make it relate to the question. Okay. And you
Okay,
will
thank you.
have, there's one, they give you 4 SAQ sets and you do 3 of them. 2 you have to do, and then the third one you can pick either number 3 or number 4. So again, you pick the one that's best for you, just like you all did when you were doing the SAQs for this year. I said you just have to do one, pick one. A lot of you did both, but pick the one that you think you can do best. Aubrey?
So, kind of jumping off that question, if they say pick one, like could you potentially do both of them? Like if you're worried about one that you have to do?
Oh, like on the SAQs, you won't be allowed to do them both, I don't think. I think the computer would kind of lock out of the one. I'm not sure on that though. That's a good question. But I think I think they would just do the first one and they would grade that and they wouldn't grade the other one. They wouldn't give you extra brownie points. So pick one and give it your all. But yeah, don't try. That's a good question though, and I should maybe try to find that out. Does the online program? I think probably, when you choose, you probably have to click on I want to do this one, and probably it locks out the other one. It's my guess. I think they would make it difficult for kids to do both of them because they wouldn't want their kids to do that. Yeah, Sana, do you have a thought, question?
So I did the practice exam FRQs, but when I wanted to grade them after, but it's not letting me open them.
Yeah.
So
I'm
is there
gonna
any
have to-
way to open them or does it
Yeah,
not?
I'm gonna try to go in tomorrow morning and see if I can change the setting there so that you can see your work. And you can grade it yourself. I'll try to check that out. And I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to do that, but I'll try.
Okay,
Walter?
thank you.
How many bonus points do we get for staying until the
I think you have to take 200 points if you're still here now, a bonus after all the other points for participating tonight, because this is above and beyond the Call of Duty. My time, it's 10 o'clock. I'm ready to hit the sack here. But thank you all for coming and taking part. I hope everything goes well for whatever AP exams you're doing this week. Jamie, are you doing any other AP exams this week? Did you already tell me and I've forgotten? Or did you not tell me?
My APUSH exam is the only one I'm taking this year.
Okay, good.
This
So
is
you
Richman. I have
only
a
have that.
question.
Yeah. Aubrey just had one today, AP Latin. Anna?
How would we go about getting letters of recommendation?
What's that?
How would we go about getting letters of recommendation?
Getting a recommendation letter?
Yeah.
Oh, you just email a teacher, email me if you want a recommendation from me. I'd be happy to write any of you a very strong recommendation? I wrote wonderful recommendations for Bishop. I hope I didn't mention your Catholic faith, Bishop. I usually wouldn't be so specific about that, but you hope. I'll have to look back and see what I wrote. I mean, I often would say something like, oh, their strong faith background will help them be a moral student on campus, and they, will be they'll be a good kid. But yeah. But yeah, any of our teachers, you can just email them. All of our teachers know that that's one of their jobs, to write recommendations for kids. Bishop?
At what point did you start thinking of me as a Roman Catholic?
I don't know when I did. I don't know. I can't remember. It was way last fall. I don't know. But I don't know how that came up. Maybe you knew something about, I think it was, you said something about
St. Augustine?
Yeah, St. Augustine or just
war theory?
Yeah, that was probably it. That was probably
St. Augustine is Presbyterian. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Or
Okay.
Presbyterian adjacent. It's hard to categorize people before Presbyterianism.
Right.
But...
You all look back. Right. So yeah, my mistake, Okay, well, I better let you all go. And thank you very much for being here. And yeah, have a good night and a good week. And I can't wait to be
Bye, thank you. Good luck, you
Thank you so
guys.
much,
Thank you.
Bye.
class. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Good luck with the
Bye.
exams.
Have a good
Bye.
experience. Enjoy Friday.